Amen. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Howard. I'm the lead pastor here at Revision, and I'm excited to be here today. How about you? I was mildly excited considering how nice of a day it is outside. I don't know how closely all you guys follow basketball. Some of you probably care a lot, and some of you probably couldn't care less. But the NBA Finals are going on right now, and LeBron James is playing at a level that is just not like anyone else on the court. He's been doing it for the whole playoffs, and as I was watching him the other night play sublime basketball, I realized I haven't seen anything even close to this since the incredible run of the Chicago Bulls in the 90s when Michael Jordan was just annihilating everything in front of him. And I flashed back, actually, to being a kid, watching the NBA Finals, just wanting to become a hero like MJ. And everybody in the 90s did. Some of you are old enough to remember the Gatorade jingle. I want to be like Mike. That was my theme song, and I figured I was halfway there. I already had the name. And as you can probably tell, the other half, the whole height, strength, athleticism, did not arrive. But I was sitting there watching basketball and started thinking about all these dreams I had as a kid of becoming heroic, of doing something really great that everyone admired, and I ended up having to laugh at myself. Not even so much because of the fact that I was a shrimpy little guy who at one point believed I might someday hit a game-winning shot in the NBA, but more because of all the times I could remember thinking, you know what, if only I could do fill in the blank, then people will really admire me. I really will have arrived at that point. That has got to be the pinnacle of human achievement. And I had so many of them. One particularly embarrassing one that came up. As a kid, I used to go to a camp called Pine Lake every summer, and the whole camp would play a game of capture the flag once per week. And the only people who ever were able to actually capture the flag and get back across the line were the counselors. They were college-age guys playing against kids. Because it was really hard, and there's a lot of people. And I remember being in 6th grade thinking, you know what? If I could capture the flag, if I could do it, just because no camper's ever done it before doesn't mean I can't do it. If I can do that, then everybody will think I'm great. And I had these visions of like walking into the dining hall the next day, and the girls were going like full Bieber on me, like, and I did it. Okay, a momentary lapse in concentration by a college-age guy, and I just took off, turned on the jets, captured the flag, and it was awesome for like 3 minutes until I realized that all the glory I thought was coming my way was just not coming because, of course, it was a meaningless game of capture the flag. Also, it turns out teenage girls are not that impressed with flag capturing. And in retrospect, I realized half of them probably didn't even know that was the name of the game we were playing. Someone just forced them to move their conversation with their friends over to a field for a while. And so there's one dream that I had that I checked that box, and I just ended up totally disappointed. And the problem is, like, it's really easy to look back on my stupidity and laugh, but that's not even a one-off. It's not even a unique situation in my life. I've done that time and time again. I know I'm not the only one. I'm not the only person in the history of the world who has gotten caught up in the belief that if I could just get myself on some pedestal, then all of my wildest dreams would come true and I'd be totally fulfilled. I know I'm not the only one. I have a buddy who believed for a while that if he could grow his company and sell it and retire early, he'd have everything he ever wanted in life, and he did. He sold it for multiple millions of dollars, and 1 month later, he got a minimum wage job because he said he'd never felt so empty, lost, and lonely in his entire life. Another good friend of mine is one of the absolute best, most ridiculously gifted pastors and leaders I've ever met. He planted a church about a decade ago, and his dream when he started his church was someday to appear in Outreach magazine. None of you know what that is. You don't have to, but every pastor does. It's the measuring stick for churches and pastors, and a couple years ago, his church made it onto Outreach magazine's list of the 100 fastest growing churches in America. It was what he'd been dreaming about for years, and he told me this. The day that magazine landed on my desk, man, I opened it, I read it, I set it down, and I spiraled into depression for a season, like as low as I've ever been in my life. Not like I was just sad, but like I needed to go get professional help. What about Michael Phelps? Maybe you've seen his commercials running all over TV right now. At the peak of his Olympic glory, more gold medals than anybody in history had ever won, he became suicidal. He very literally stood on a podium in front of the entire world, and something was missing. And I wonder how many of us in this room can relate. My suspicion is that it's all of us, whether we're even aware of it or not. We've all believed, and maybe we are currently caught up believing, that if we could just become a hero by seizing that thing, achieving that greatness, then all of the praise and all the honor and all of the adulation we get would fill us up, and it'd be what we wanted, it'd be what we're looking for, and we'd finally be content with our lives. And we tell ourselves, we do it all the time, over and over and over again, I will have fully arrived once I get that promotion, once I get that recognition, once I make that all-star team, once I receive that award, once I get that new job that I deserve, once I get there, then. You know what happens then? Then we get there and we realize that the pedestal isn't nearly as comfortable as we thought it would be. And all those spaces where we thought we'd probably feel full just feel strangely empty. And so we do the natural thing. We do the thing everybody else around us is doing. We do the human thing. We decide, well, I just must be on the wrong pedestal. This one isn't it, but that one. And so we just pick a new dream to go chasing, believing that if we get that dream, then we'll finally be happy. We'll finally be satisfied. It's just a vicious cycle that repeats itself. And I want to press pause on it this morning for a minute and just ask, why? Why is it that our heroic dreams often leave us feeling like anything but heroes? Why is it that they often leave us so empty even when we achieve them? I think maybe it's because all of that honor and all of that success simply aren't enough to be what our souls are desperately longing for. This is a counterintuitive, countercultural thought, but I want to throw it out there. What if your glory is actually too small a thing to live for? We're kicking off this brand new series here at Revision this morning called For Iowa. And what we're going to do is spend the next 3 weeks looking at the vision God has given us, this particular church, this particular community of people right here in this place where He's put us. We're going to talk about who He's inviting us to be and what He's inviting us to do. And as we do that, specifically, like as we think about what it might look like for us to be who God created us to be, for us to do the things He has stamped the name Revision on and prepared in advance for us to do, as we think about that specifically, I want to talk over the next few weeks about 3 different mindset changes that we need. 3 different major shifts in our thinking that have to happen if we're actually going to be a church that's for Iowa, that helps people meet Jesus and follow Him fully, that rewrites eternity for our city and our state. My conviction is we got to think differently than the world around us. We got to think differently than the people around us about what it looks like to serve the city, to love the lost, and to multiply the movement. And I want to begin the series this morning by talking about this idea of service for 2 reasons. First of all, I think this desire for heroic greatness is pretty universal. It lives somewhere inside every single one of us, and I don't actually think it's bad. I think God put it there. I'm thoroughly convinced that God created every person in this room to be a hero. It's just that being a hero looks way different than we ever thought it looks. It means living for a glory that's way bigger than your own. And the second reason I want to kick off the series by talking about service is I think if we don't get this one right, we will never get the rest of it quite right. And it breaks my heart to admit this, and I'm complicit in it, but I think most of us have not seen this lived out well in the church. We just haven't seen a lot of churches and a lot of communities and a lot of Christians that are living this the way Jesus invited us to live it and the way Jesus did it. And I believe that if we can't get there, if we're not willing to do what Jesus is going to invite us to do in a minute, that we will always fall short of the vision God has for us, always, because we're going to be aimed in the wrong direction. And so what we're going to do this morning is dig in to what Jesus says about the direction in which we should be headed. We're We're going to look at some of his thoughts about what it really looks like to be a hero. So if you have your Bibles or Bibles with you this morning, you can open them up to the book of Mark, chapter 10, sandwiched right between Matthew and Luke. If you don't have a Bible or own one, please take one from the Next Steps table. We have a bunch, and we love it when they disappear. And you can also open up the passage and find message notes in the Revision app. But we're going to pick up the story kind of towards the end of the chapter in verse 32. Jesus and his disciples and a whole bunch of other people are on a journey. It says this: they were on their way up to Jerusalem. And for what it's worth, this is their last trip to Jerusalem. We're reaching the point in the story of Jesus where it's about to reach its crescendo. So they're on the way to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. And this is hearkening back to what Jesus just said before the journey. He talked to them about money and about faith, and he just messed up their lives, because that's what the teaching of Jesus does. It's going to mess up our lives this morning. Okay? And again, he took the 12 aside. He stops, moves away from the crowd, says, I got to talk to my guys for a minute. And he's about to have a very serious, very deep conversation with them. And he pulls them aside because he wants to make sure they are zoned in. And this is what Jesus tells them. He says he told them what was going to happen to him. We're going up to Jerusalem, he said, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him, and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise. That's an intense revelation. Imagine being the disciples right now. Jesus pulled you over to the side of the road. It feels like things are going good. The crowds are getting bigger. Everybody knows your name now. Things are rocking, and you're headed to Jerusalem. And Jesus is like, yeah, we are headed to Jerusalem. Here's what's about to go down when we get there. Like, if you're one of those 12 guys, you probably have questions, and they did. They did. The next verse starts with the word then. It's like then, and it means right then. Immediately after Jesus finished saying that, a couple of them had a question. It said, then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do? They replied, let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left in glory. That's their question. Jesus literally just revealed to them that he's about to go get tortured and killed, and they follow it up with, hey, Jesus, bro, sorry about that whole, like, flogging and spitting and dying thing, but we have a question. Yeah, what? Like, here's, the whole torture and death thing, we're probably going to hang back during that. Because we don't know how that's going to go. It's probably going to stink for you. But we'll just hang back. But then after, we kind of think you're the king. So once you get past the bad part and you get to the glory part, then we just we want to re-engage. And then can we be number 2 and number 3? And the rest of the disciples find out that they're having this conversation, of course, because they're sitting there, and they get really mad. Not because they're good people. And they're like, that is so insensitive. He just told you he's going to get beaten and die, and you're going to no. Because the rest of them are like, hey, what about me? I wanted to be number 2. And here's Jesus, who just tried to have an intimate moment with these guys, and he's like, serenity now. Serenity now. Sit back down. He has them all sit back down on the side of the road. He says, we're going to go over this again. Do you guys get it? Really? This is what you're asking me right now? Do you know where we are in the story? Do you know what chapter we're in? This is chapter 10. It's almost over. Have you picked up on nothing I said the last 3 years? So these guys are mad for all the wrong reasons. This is what Jesus says to them. It says the 10 heard about this. They became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and he said, you guys know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. And their high officials exercise authority over them. It's really interesting here. The words that Mark uses for lord it over and exercise authority are pretty unique. One of them only shows up a couple other times in the New Testament, and the other one isn't found anywhere in any other significant piece of ancient literature that anyone's ever found. So Mark uses these unique words to make a powerful point. That people at the top of the food chain, those who have ascended to the pinnacle of the org chart, people with power, use the people around them for their own benefit. The way the world works is that everything funnels up to the top. And Jesus sits his disciples down and is like, do you guys get that? Do you guys understand that that's the system that you're living in? And they're like, Yeah, we absolutely get it. That's why we want to be number 2 and number 3 in your kingdom. We know exactly how it works. Like you fight to get to the top, and then all the people underneath you have to do what you say, and you get a benefit. Yeah, that's actually why we ask the question. We know exactly how it works. Jesus. Like, when we get to your kingdom, you kind of got to be number 1. But isn't it time for us to reap the rewards? We've been following you for a long time. We gave up a lot so we could follow you. Isn't it time for us to get the payback and get some benefit from all these other suckers who are following us too? Is it like it's time? And then Jesus says something to them. And to you and to me and to every single one of us. They're sitting there nodding their heads. You know how the system works? Yeah, we know. And every one of us in this room knows exactly how it works too. And Jesus drops this 4-word response. I want to encourage you to write it down. Write these 4 words down and put them somewhere you're going to see them every day, whether it's on your mirror or your dashboard or your steering wheel or your desk at work. If you're a tattoo person, get it tattooed. I'll write it out in Greek for you so it looks cooler. Ux estai en human. Those 4 words are what this church is here for. Those 4 words are what this series is about. Those 4 words change the game. Those 4 words are where we're going for Iowa. Jesus says, you guys know the system? Yep. Not so with you. Not so with you. And when he says it here, I love it. This verb is in a tense in Greek that talks about not just the decision, not just a one-time thing, but a continuing reality over space and time. Jesus looks at these guys and he very literally says, as you're going through the world, if you're going to be my people, my tribe, my church, I know how it functions with everybody else, but it will not be being that way for you. This is not how it's going to work in my kingdom. So you got a choice. You can keep chasing the world. You can keep doing it the way the world wants. You can keep believing that if you just get on that pedestal, you'll be fully fulfilled. You can try it, or you can do it my way. But if you're going to do it my way, you got to do it like I did it. You cannot be a part anymore of the broken systems of a shattered world. And he continues teaching him. He says, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you. At this point, he's just looking for the hands. He's like, who? Anybody? 12 of you. Any of you want to be great? How about you guys? Who in this room wants to be great? A few of you are honest. The rest of you are just lying to me. You can lie to me. I don't know any better. These guys, they've been with Jesus 3 years. They knew better. They weren't going to lie. Because he always knew. She's like, who wants to be great? And finally, they're all, I knew that. All right. So all of you, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be the slave of all. So this is how it works, you guys. And every last one of them, guaranteed, all 12 are sitting there like, I don't think that's how it works. Jesus, Jesus, I've been alive for a bit, and that's not how it works. Stop. Not so with you. And he finishes by putting the chair in top. He drops this bomb that totally shakes him up. And we know, because we can read in the book of Acts, that they got it. They finally figured it out. But he says this, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Like for them, for us. If the head of this whole thing, if the one who had all the power and all the resources and all the glory, if the one who most deserved to be at the top and have everything funnel up, decided that that wasn't the way he was going to do things, but instead he was going to leverage every last bit of that for the sake of others, then that is the only way the church can function. It's the only way we can be who God is calling us to be in the world. And the thing is, Jesus did this intentionally. He did it on purpose. This can't just be a fun idea. Like I know, even as we talk about this, for all of us, there's something inspiring about the idea of giving ourselves for the sake of others. We get fired up, like, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. But if it's a cool idea, it will die in the idea phase. This has to be a hard-bent commitment and a decision that we make about how we're gonna live, if we want to make a difference for Iowa, that God placed us, each one of us, and this community here to make. This is the lens through which we must see things. We got to intentionally be on the lookout for ways to serve and give and leverage what we have and who we are for the sake of others. Particularly for the sake of those who have less power and less resources and less influence than we do. For the sake of the needy, for the sake of the next generation, for the sake of the people God's placed in front of us. I just believe if we love Jesus, that's the only way to respond to that love. It's the only thing we can do. We've all heard the golden rule before, right? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. It's a great rule, but I think Jesus actually invites us to something way deeper and way bigger than that in the Bible. Like Paul kind of talks about it later in one of his letters. He's like, hey, out of love for Jesus, here's what I want you to do. I want you to submit to everybody around you. I don't care who they are. I don't care how low they are on the social ladder. I want you to submit to everybody because you love Jesus, because Jesus died for you. And he creates this whole separate thing. I heard a pastor from Atlanta like 5 years ago. His name's Andy Stanley. He called it the platinum rule. He said the gold rule, that's old stuff. The platinum rule is do unto others as God through Jesus has done to you. That raises the bar. That raises the bar a little bit. It changes the game. Because if the God of the universe didn't feel the need to aim everything in the direction of his own power and glory, if Jesus came not to be served, but to serve, it kind of flips our whole system upside down. It creates this brand new relational dynamic where instead of the people around you being tools to use for your own glory, instead of the people beneath you in your family structure, in your company structure, on the org chart at work, instead of all those people existing for you, Jesus says, no, you exist for them. I can't help but wonder what it would look like if all of us decided that we were going to actively and purposefully seek out ways in which we can get up underneath the burdens of the people around us. What if we asked ourselves the question continually? What if we decided that we were going to live out not so with you as just a life motto, and we're going to ask ourselves the question continually, how can I leverage what I have, my resources, my ability, and my influence for the sake of meeting the needs of the people around me? What would change? What might be accomplished in our world, in our city, in our state, if we decided that we were going to adopt an entirely new vision of what greatness was? If we decided that instead of fighting for the pedestal and clawing for the glory and trying to be the hero, we were going to make heroes? What if we asked ourselves continuously, what would it look like for the fruit of my life to grow on other people's trees? It's not an easy mental shift to make. It's not for me, especially because all of us have spent our lives smack dab in the middle of a culture that constantly pushes us to keep grasping for ours, to keep seeking the glory, to keep running for the top and using the people around us to get there. But we all know people who've made that shift, people who are living it out. Some of you have made that shift. Some of you have done it for me and recently, and I'm blown away. And we all are. When we meet people who are living like that, when we meet people who decide that their greatest function is just build stages that other people can stand on, it profoundly impacts us. I think those people, the people that are living that way, have figured out something that the rest of us need to learn. To like really live in the way Jesus invites us to live, the way he created us to live, means living for a different set of goals. Those people are living for their eulogy while everyone else around them is living for their resume. What are you? What are you living for? Are you living for your resume or your eulogy? Man, it's tempting to live for your resume, for your accomplishments, your achievements, your role. Some of you are convinced that that's where it's at. You've been chasing it, but is it enough? Is your glory a big enough thing to give your life to. One of my good buddies from college tragically passed away a few years ago, and I was able to do his funeral, and he was a guy with megawatt talent. He was running his own company in his 20s. He was the youngest ever member of the board of directors of the exchange that he traded on. He was on Forbes 30 under 30 most successful investors under the age of 30 in the United States of America. It is nearly impossible to get a resume better than his. But of all the people that stood up and talked at his funeral, and there were a lot, not one of them felt compelled to mention any of that. Instead, they all just kept talking about how he touched their lives. And many of them talked about how he leveraged his resources, his knowledge, and his ability to help them out and build them up when they were in need. Are you living for your resume or your eulogy? So I'll tell you what, that funeral, watching person after person forget all the accomplishments of his life and talk about the impact he made on them personally was a powerful reminder to me. The great Dutch hero, Corrie ten Boom, who risked everything she had, including her very life, to save Jews from the Nazis, was spot on when she said, the measure of a life, after all, is not its duration, but its donation. That's one of the core values of Revision Church. Gifted people give to people. We believe that God has given each and every single one of us gifts so that we can be a blessing to the world around us. Gifted people give to people. That's what it looks like to live like Jesus in the world. And so my challenge to you this week, all of you, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter how much or how little you believe you have to give and offer and leverage for the sake of the people around you, I challenge everyone in this room this week to embrace, just as your motto for the week, those 4 words of Jesus, not so with you. Here's one specific way you can begin to live that out. You can take one step towards living with that as the lens through which you see the world and the lives around you. It's asking a simple question that changes everything because it flips the power dynamic of our world. How can I help? How can I help you? I want to challenge all of you this week to ask that question at least once per day for 1 week. I dare you to try it. I dare you to ask it to somebody, anybody, even if they're above you on the org chart and the power structure of your job or your family, but especially if they're beneath you. Some of you, if your boss walked into your cube tomorrow and asked, how can I help you, you would faint. Some of you, the people who work for you, would faint if you walked into their cube and said, how can I help you? Because it is so antithetical to the way this world works. But that's the brilliance of it, because living like this, living this out in our lives isn't just living like Jesus, it's showing people who he is. It's giving them a tangible grip on his love. Because it does a couple things. One, it treats the problems and the needs of the people around you like they're serious and they matter, because they do. And number 2, it shifts the game, because there's a whole bunch of people in our world who are used to constantly being asked, how can I leverage you to help me? But this is asking them, how can you leverage me to help you? And it's giving them a picture of who Jesus is and what he's all about. And the process is so countercultural, they want to know why. They will want to know why, and Jesus is why. So I challenge you to ask it this week. I don't care whether you're 13 years old or 113 years old. You have the ability, because of how God created you and uniquely wired you, because of the proximity he put you in with other people, you have the ability to put wind in somebody's sails this week. Will you do it? Will you do it? Will you show, will you live the love of Jesus? I think it matters a lot that we get this right. I think if we don't do it, like if we keep on believing that our own glory is a big enough thing to give our lives to, if we keep on aiming our lives towards our resumes and not our eulogies, if not so with you doesn't become our rallying cry and the lens through which we view every relationship in our lives, then we're going to keep chasing glory and coming up empty, and we will waste the opportunities in every one of our relationships, at work and our families, every life our lives crash into. We will waste the opportunities God has placed in our hands to truly be heroes who rewrite eternity for Iowa. See, the truth is, the smaller we get, the bigger we are in the kingdom of God. Because our Savior got very, very, very small in order to get up underneath the burden and the weight of our sin. And when we do that same thing, we point people towards him, and what we find is true heroism and true greatness in the process. So let's get small this week. Will you guys pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for getting small so that we could live. Thank you for stepping out of eternity into our story. You have every right to funnel everything up to you for your glory and your holiness and your power. And instead you leveraged who you are so that we could be reconciled. God, we're just blown away. Let us live like that. God, would you just help us be a church that flips the power system of this world upside down, that asks the question, how can I help? How can I serve? How can I leverage what God has given me for the sake of the people around me so that they, God, so that our world, so that our city and our state might know your love through us. We just pray that you do that in us. In Jesus' name, amen.